Hey, Bublin, coming in, crushing this hard. So I wanted to talk about um, how I see moon signs in astrology. It's just on my mind, right? Um, and it really has to do with this core relationship between the moon and the sun. I like the electromagnetic model. I guess that's not too present in the physical, but I guess I really do feel it on a metaphysical level. But either way, the moon becomes the sort of a convergent, right, coming together, like bringing together, right, like a dream, right? A dream brings it all together, and 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 it's like that sort of death and like receptive principle, though it's like shooting up, like if which would be that like reintegration. It's like it's creating like the womb or just the waters for something to grow, right? It's like a vibe. Yeah, it's a space, frequency in which something can um, start to catch, start to take root, right? In which like space can, right? In which its babies, like its fruit, right, can spring, right? It's a spring, yeah. The springs of springing beings, right? So that that is like the moon, right? Whereas then the sun would be the sort of um, um, everything blossoming out, right? The springing, like that being able to use the fruit, right? All these things, and then the realization would be all the fixed principles, like I view like the ascendant and the relationships, like it, and then the Saturn, right? And all that opposing the personalization of the sun and the moon being those spiritual, mutable, like, right? Like I was talking about, that wet, that fluidness, and then the cardinality, like that expression, that personal expression, right? So, so yeah. So either way, then that moon being all that, being that space we come from and that sort of vibe, right? It's dealing with all our connections, right? Like in so many ways, then the sun can be like our future and where we're going and what we can associate with, right? So we can dream that and we have control over that, right? So this is kind of coming from a space where already, like our circumstance and what we work through, what I like to think about is our powers, right? Because it's like it's what we have the power of. It's everything we can use, right? Is going to be associated with the moon, right? So then when we see now putting the planets into perspective, how I like to see the planets relationships is that like Venus, and Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter are all like sort of around the moon, like the Kabbalah tree of life, I feel like represents it good, are all around the moon, because they're like elementals working through like the feminine, and so Mars and Jupiter end up associating with the the masculine a little bit, right? Like they become the sort of spiritual, more turned up, and not just cold as Venus and Mercury, right? So, but then when we take it up a notch, then the sun would have around it Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn, right? Yeah, yeah, Neptune and Saturn, then, well, not Neptune and Saturn, in like, I guess I'd have to think about that. Because elementally, I could see it, right? Like that's the actual alignment of the planets. But elementally, how I see and it might just be me, right? Like in a delusion or something, like in an illusion, like. But Uranus being associated with that uncovering individuality really associates it with air to me, and then Saturn with Earth, and because those are then the sort of feminine or in the real world, just like Jupiter and Mars are the spiritual and the feminine, it makes me think that those would have the ties to have part moon moon connection, right? But I guess it would make sense to be Neptune and Saturn as well, because Neptune is like that connection, right? So yeah, interesting thoughts. But either way, yeah, still furthering on, like regardless of how they all mix and mingle, because it all mix and mingles, right? But how a lot of the times how I like to see the aspects is Mars versus Pluto, each associating with this sort of fiery potential, right? Like the death and rebirth and raw spiritualization of Pluto, right? And then you have like the individuation in Uranus. That's why I like to think about it like the fire earth, right? And then when you have it's like verse Mercury versus Uranus, and then Mars versus Pluto, right? And then but like Mars is more so it's like the will, because it's how you can channel the power, because it's working through the feminine, like I was saying, the moon, into going, right, into creating direction, right, into what is it, like just into that will, right, into your vision, right, that fire, what is driving you, right? So then, but then now when we think about the spiritual perspective with Pluto, now this is going to be, because it's dealing with the sun, when we think about our visions, what is going to be changing that, like that dual fire is what associates it with that rebirth, right? Or that like dual, that fire and spiritualization, right? That fire and sun. So it's like the like we have control over our visions, right? So when our visions go through a changing experience like that, that's when, like, you know, shit's been shooken up, right? So that's like when you're a whole new person, like literally, right? So that's why whereas then Neptune, the water aspect, right, going down, right, fire, water, Pluto, Neptune, would then be the water, like the dreams, like the frequency, the actual space, right? So if we think about the space in which our sun or our spirit, right, our direction and our visions are in, now if that is getting like cycled through, that means like it's a literal transformation, right? Like when that's like turning up, when that's like being lit like fire, right? Like fire is always trying to go somewhere new, and it's always trying to spiritualize, right? So when when the actual space in which we're envisioning now feels different, and like it is somewhere different, we're like, you know, that's like a whole cycle, right? A whole like life chapter. So anyway, now, so going back, that was Neptune, but then the Uranus would then be understanding that space, like once we've realized through Pluto our space, right, down into Neptune, off of that frequency, off of all our connections, right, we brought ourselves into that feminine water energy, right? Once we brought ourselves through that, now we can start to develop expressions, right? Actual things that utilize the space, like the substance of my body, right, in order to express myself, right? Like all of the art I create through my language, right? And everything I do to communicate and interact and build and do anything with anybody, right? So, and that would be the reason, right? Because that would be the art or the actual instantiation of our vision that would have logic behind it, right? Because that's as far as it would be in an expression, right? That's as far as it would utilize true air energy, like, is being backed by something possible, right? Like if the vision completely has zero power and there's no you're never in that space, right? Being in the space, being able to use and having that power, if you're never able to be in that space and be able to use that substance, but you're always dreaming of it, right? Then that's not, you're not unlocking the Uranian quality, right? There's no bone behind your energy, right? It's just all a vibe, right? And a vibe without the bone don't go too far, right? It's just how it be. So anyway, but then once if that reason is unlocked, then that's when you get the Saturn, right? Now all of a sudden you've got the key, the energy, right? The reason. Once you combine the Pluto, the vibe, right? Your perspective, and the Neptune, the space, right? Everything that you're receptive to, all the spaces that you can vibe with, right? All the relationships you can create, and now you've developed an actual reason, right? That's like a golden aura. Now that's like a vehicle that you can inhabit, and then that can go through Saturn, right? That's like yeah. And that's realization, right? And then so then that's basically how verse, like the feminine, it would work, right? But like that one goes like like elementally, right? They, like, I see them both elementally, and it makes sense to me. But then it's like, then once we're in the realization of the feminine energy, we talked about Mars, but then Jupiter would then be that space, right? So within the feminine energy, right, when we're connecting to the space and we're working through it, there's a limiting realization factor, but it's through a greater meta vibe, or like a greater meta vibe, like a greater spirit that we're utilizing. So basically Jupiter stirs up and it brings out the sort of root of whatever we're connected to, and that's sort of the like what we're connecting to, having that experience to what it's connected to. Like for real though, it's like when like that water energy is that where we come from, and it is that nature, in that if like logic and reason is based on utilizing natures in order to art and create expression, right? Such that if it's not backed by any sort of law or sense or facts, right, then we're not going to understand it. But those facts and those space, like that's sort of this fluid that we're within, right? So yeah. But anyway, thinking about that then, and thinking about now everything that we're connected to, being drawn out through Jupiter, is really being stirred up, right? Because it's that spiritual quality of the water compounding, and also a reveal of sort of where our feelings are coming from, right? Because we already have our feelings, right? The moon, and then like one step behind where they're coming from, right? So that's why Jupiter's associated with Pisces and Sag, the most mutable of them, right? Because the other two mutables would be Gemini and Virgo, but they're like the realized. So they're still very mutable, but they're working with the real elements, right? Earth and air. Whereas this Gemini and Sag, or this, I'm sorry, Sag and Pisces really have the ability to go to these uncharted territories, right? And that's that Jupiter, like, just really stirring, right? Yeah. That water on water. And then, okay, so yeah, keeping going though. Now, once we have Mercury, that's where Mercury becomes our expression, right? So now when we think about, like, I guess we could go back to Jupiter and how Jupiter and Neptune contrast, because we compared Mars and Pluto, right? But then Jupiter and Neptune would contrast because, or how they would be that through the feminine energy, Jupiter is bringing out our feelings, but through the masculine energy, Neptune is bringing out our space, like ours, right? So basically, Jupiter can draw us in to all the natures that are possible externally, right? Whereas Neptune is going to draw us deeper into the natures that that like our space, right? Into what we want to be connected to, into what had to do with the reason that we came here, right? So Jupiter is more power, right? That's why they associate it with abundance, because anything that's mutable is like associating with that 9, like riding and catching every single wave and just going with it. And if you actually have the ability to do that, that's just this raw like, I want to say, like, yeah, channeling energy, right? Where everything that comes your way, you're going to take it because you know how to, like, sort of save that or source that, and then all of a sudden, like, utilize that as power to go forward, right? You find yourself able to utilize it for your expression, right? So, or any wave, right? Anything that comes at you. So, that versus the sort of that powerful element versus this sort of frequenting element of where I want to be, right? The spiritualization of action, right? And the direction that we're taking, right? The aim, the goal, the reason, right? Through Jupiter, or the reasons like created, right? But that's sort of just the aim, like it's created through multiple attempts at this direction, right? But then when we frequent through Pluto, the raw, like I want to say, like just the raw spiritualization, once we end up frequenting something, that's sort of like our higher vibe, right? Like, for real. And then yeah, our power would be that Pluto. It's interesting because it's like I want to say that could be flipped because, like I said, this is how I'm seeing it, right? It's an understanding through like my own visions, right? But mentally, I'm saying mentally, like Pluto is sort of the awakening, right? And then we have Neptune, and this is also in order by speed, right? Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn. And that like creates an elemental order that like makes sense too to me. It's like you have the space or the raw spirit associating with, not is, but sort of associating with like that spiritualization principle, associating with Pluto, right, which would be like the spark almost, I want to say. And then wherever that spark is consistently, that would be Neptune, right? That would create a frequency, right? Wherever that space, right, that Pluto is consistently, would create that space, right? That tune, right? That Neptune. So so that's why sort of the verses would be drawing us more into what we're looking to be connected to would be Neptune, right? Like associating with that hanging man in tarot. Whereas Jupiter would more so bring us out to, well, if you were open to connections, these are all the different possibilities. Like, this is everything Jupiter's like. But, like, I know you came here for that, right? But, there's really, like, a garden over here, like, city over here, like, man, you can really go out and see some shit. You can go out hike, you can go into ice caves, up mountains, like, you can have parties, you can really figure out what's needed, be an entrepreneur. Like, Jupiter's like, but like, you can stay inside, but Jupiter's always going to be out there like, but but and it'll be just talking hype too. Like, Jupiter's just talking hype too. Like, but it's like, no, I don't know. And it's like, it's hyping it up for sure. It's like, it's got that hype. But anyway, so now, going further than that, Mercury on Uranus, then the finally key and the reason in our expression is really channeling, right? So that's really bringing new, like the compounding element of the spiritualization, right? And then the utilizing that space to see where you can go is like, it's like awakening. It's like seeing for the first time. And now, I know, like, I was saying that Pluto's the awakening, but that's like the actual, like, raw spiritualization, right? But then now, once we've gone through life, like, you know what I mean? We've been going. We're like, oh, I like that area. I don't really like that area, I haven't been over there. It's like you sort of develop your abilities, right? And your reasons, right? And so that, that through spiritualization, right, versed through our powers, like our powers and Mercury's always gonna want, because it's compounding the utilizing the power, it's always going to want to make sure that its input, it's like right hand path energy, it's always going to want to correlate its input with somewhere to be heard. So like our vocalization, if it's not getting anywhere for long enough, it'll start to like sort of atrophy a little bit. Like, it'll start to lose hype, it'll start to lose power, because won't have that feedback loop. But then there's the opposite principle going on with Uranus, where the self is called upon. So it's like the dual spiritualization. So through that, there's this newness. It's yeah, it's like the opposite. It's left-hand path energy. It's cultivating your own space, because now that you've been in your space, right, and you've already like started to see where you can go, now it's like it's sort of like these are all the possibilities, and it's like yeah. So it's always like new understandings, like new possibilities, right? And it's like it's trying to cultivate, because it still has that element of wanting to be powerful. So it's trying to cultivate, but it's always trying to make sure it's for like, it's like your reason first, your purpose first. So yeah, well, so basically Uranus is over here like, bitch, like you're like Uranus, like I'm gonna do this, like for real, like it don't matter, like I'm still putting food on the plate. Like Uranus, because it's not Pluto, Pluto don't give a fuck, right? Pluto do fucking anything, right? Pluto's over there like, bitch, why are you putting food on your plate? I fucking died, I went to hell, like I fucking came back, like like Uranus is over here like, okay, but like, you know, I love my mom. Like for real though. And then okay. And then fucking Neptune's over there. Neptune's just going through it. Like Neptune don't got words for real. Neptune's just like, but like it's going through it, like but it only feels like that's what it is it's going through. Like it's not like sticky, right? If that makes sense. I guess that doesn't make too much sense. Basically, while all this is going on, like this it's just creating the relationship, right? And everything that literally creates that relationship is what is Neptune, and that becomes the tune. So like Neptune is literally the vibe there, like all these guys are creating, right? It's like the mom, like of them all. That's why it's like all bending, like I guess, yeah, bending in on itself, right? Because it's like without spiritualization and self, right, soul, there would be no relationships or realization, right? But without the sort of realization, there would be no soul, right? Because without a tune or a frequency, it's all just space. It's all just spirit. Right? Like, what? It's, I know it goes frequency, and then that creates the energy, but I forget what the frequency. Oh, the amplitude? Yeah, the amplitude, right? The amplitude, the space, sort of where it's at. Which is interesting. Just find that interesting. Yeah, it's like yeah. But anyway, so go like getting back. Uranus is over there like, look, I'm gonna put food on my plate how I want to, like I don't give a fuck what anybody else is doing. Like Uranus is the first in the woods, like looking like a fucking ruffian, you know, like figuring out how to recycle shit out the trash. Like Uranus, it don't give two fucks, right? But you know, like I said, it's putting food on the plate. Like I'm like Pluto over there, like Pluto just like, fucking I'll go to hell. Like it's not even like you go to hell. Like it don't even need to say that. Like if Pluto wants you to go to hell, like you're in hell. Like it don't gotta say that. Uranus be more like it would give you an out. It would give you a quick out. Like Uranus would say something like, Like it'd be diving through the trash, right? It's because it's so selfish. Like for real, it'd be like going through the trash or something. And for a second, someone would come by and they'd be like, "Oh, bitch," like, or you know what I mean? Yeah, fucking like, what are you like? A fucking bitch beta, like, siphoning off these motherfuckers or these actual people, right? And then Uranus over there, like, you really don't want me to eat? Like, you're really that low? Like, you really don't have a soul? You want to turn this into something, right? Like, it would give it that, right? But after that, after you react, if you're not fucking with it, it's like either you're like, bitch, like you ain't, and then like you drive off, right? Or you're fucking like, yeah, bitch, get the fuck out of here. Then Uranus is gonna start shit. Like it's not gonna back down. Like it's in its own space. Like Uranus ain't about to play, even if it's like it's got reason. Like it's like, hey man, like this is a regular thing. Like if I'm doing this, like if you're not figuring out how to make something of this, like I'll take this to a fucking political level. Like it understands the diplomacy, it just don't give a shit. Like it's just in its own head, right? So you can still see it with the fucking beard, with the fucking talking like real loud in front of a bunch of people, right? Like you'll still see it playing that role. It just because it gets it, it just don't give a fuck. Like it's just like, but I'm gonna do it my way, right? First, Mercury over there, which is like, yeah, I get it. Like, I want to be myself, right? But there's this sort of, you know, you get farther, diving through people's like bank accounts legally, right? Like it's like an accountant, right? Than you do like diving through trash or something like that. Like it'd make up something like that. It'd be like, well, like it would like low key be shitting on like your position, and it would try to keep it logical, but it would low key be because of the sort of feminine qualities in Mercury that are like, well, you don't got any power. Like you don't got like you're talking here, but like you can't really get a clue if people like that or not. Like you can't really get a clue if they're gonna make something off that or not. Like you could still be out on the street tomorrow, right? Whereas Mercury's like, but like, this checks out, and also like I can always bring this up at the dinner table, and people are like, oh yeah, they're not gonna bat an eye, right? They're not gonna do anything, but this still is helping me get closer to my goals, right? But I'm still allowed to do it my way, right? So there's that sort of layer of restriction that Mercury's under, right? Just like a little kid, right? Like for real. And then, so that would be the like comparison. Whereas then we have Saturn and Venus, right? Where we have Saturn's like, look, you can do it, but that's got to be why you're doing it, basically. Like Saturn's like, I really don't care what you do. You know what I mean? Like you've already developed a tune, like you got your relationship with mom, you know what I mean? Like I don't give a fuck, right? But do it. You know what I mean? Like it's like if you're not actually willing, now that you've walked through those gates, if you're not actually willing to uphold that, then get out. Like now it's gonna cause some shit. Like, cause it's really that driving force with that like sort of earthly spiritualization. It's really that driving force of either you're drilling, refining, crafting, sort of engineering, or there are earthquakes coming your way. It's like either you're creating the technology to sustain through the earthquake, through that, like the actual habits and building, or you're actually just that rock, right? You haven't refined your vehicle, you haven't refined your tune to where you're just part of the rock, like you're just still part of Earth, right? You're still part of Mom, and once the earthquake comes through, it's gonna come through you, right? And that's Saturn. It's like, look, your tune vibrates alongside this world. It's like, that's why, I don't give a fuck. Like, you already got your relationship with Mom. It's just like, but if you don't make her proud, aka if you don't fulfill that, this world's gonna crush you. Like, in order it's like, it's almost like in order to be in the sea, you must be able to ride with the dolphins or something, right? It's basically like, if you can't swim, or it's like, don't fish if you can't swim, basically, is what Saturn says. Like, don't fish if you can't swim, basically. And so that's that. Whereas, like, now we got Venus. Venus is like, Venus be different, because Venus got that compounding feminine energy, right? So on a lot of levels, Venus be open, but she be like, she be attached is the thing. Like, she be open and she be receptive, but Venus is like a princess, and she got her ways, right? She's got her tune, she's got her frequency, and she wants to further that, and there's like, there ain't nothing you can do about it. It's literally the body, the sort of like sweetness that we get sucked into, that creates the body, that Saturn make or breaks with the whole, is this part of your tune or not? Is this actual part of your frequency? Because the thing about Venus now, about getting attached to the sort of feminine connections and creating that dryness around sort of what we have power and capabilities to, that's like our body, right? That's like whereas like Saturn's like the DNA, or the sort of blueprint, right? Because it's like, once you got reason, that can refine, but reason's always looking for new ideas, right? But now that it's like a tree, and it's like the edges are always looking for new ideas, and the roots are always like slurping for new areas, right? Kind of stretching out. But now you got that tree, so it's like, okay, I can create a brain now. We can continue the growing process in action, right? Is like how Uranus is always going to allow you to keep awakening further into like the mental world, right? The mental plane. Whereas, going back, Neptune, or not Neptune, Venus sort of gets this, it like starts to understand too. It's like, I want to say it's a princess, but it's still in that like, or it's in like a preliminal space, aka it doesn't quite know, or Venus doesn't quite know if she's going to be a queen yet. She doesn't quite know how everything's going to turn out, right? But she's still a princess, to where she's like, I've got attached to that, but then it was taken away from me. Like, I got attached to that, and it was taken away from me. But so it's kind of like Venus is always sort of forced to decide. And that's that like clash, that sort of work um, that is kind of present there too. It's like that that sort of dryness that's created, and also that connection to Libra, and it's like it's trying basically just to expand where it's coming from and what it's connected to, right? But it's doing it in a way where, like I said, it likes what it's likes. Like it's kind of a struggle between this receptive quality of connection and love, and being a part of something greater, but it's like struggling with that, and like where it is. Like, yeah, it's a dreamer, like for sure. Venus is a dreamer, to where, but she's like the princess. Yeah, exactly. She's like the dreamer. Like, she's still locked away though. Like, Venus is still what it is. Like, that's a perfect example. Wow, that's like a great allegory, because it's like it combines that earthly element of connection, right, comparable to that Saturnian quality of Earth, while through the feminine energy of the moon and connection, right? So it's like, I still got my habits, I still got my ways, I still got this tower, but like, I do see the sky. Like, it's like, I may not be able to do all those things with you, and there's so much more that I do see. It's not like I don't see them. I just have my ways, right? But that's why I can still play that feminine aspect of, well, you know, I see what you're saying, right? Like, it's not gonna be like, no, this is my way. It'll be like, okay, yeah, like, that makes sense. Like, I'll try it, but I'm not gonna I'm like, this probably won't be a thing, like, honestly, like something like that, right? But it's not gonna be like, the fuck kind of idea is that? Like, I mean, depending, right? Like, I'm just saying it's gonna balance that need for connection, right? It's not gonna abandon all its connections in order to be a dreamer, right? But at the same time, it's still gonna, in order to see dreams, right? But at the same time, it's still gonna like hold its place and hold what it's doing, right? Like I said, yeah. But at the same time, it might be like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But it might be like, at the end of the day, I love you though. Like, I'm here for you though, right? It'll play that energy, for sure. But yeah, that's like the 10. But yeah, so then the sun and the moon, because like the sun and the moon and all the relationships, like the ascendant, which was literally just a map of the present. So like, that's like now, like, but all these things are one, right? And then it's like the sort of like the moon's like yeah, down here, right? And then we got like Mars and Jupiter and Mercury and Venus down here, and then we got the sun up here, right? And it's like up here, like giving out, right? Like up here's giving out, and then down here's like putting in, right? Like everything that's coming your way, right, is up here, and then everything you're giving out's up here, right? And then we got the sun up here, and we got Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn up here, right? Yeah, and then like they basically create the whole thing. So anyway, I just want to talk about that because I wanted to talk about something in my next video. I forgot what it was, but I think this was just a part 1 of that. I think I'll need to go back and talk about elements too. But for some reason it's not coming to my mind. How undesired. So we talked about how the energies aspect each other. We could talk about correlations, but there's like something. Either way, stop thinking the video anyway. Thanks for staying. Thanks for hearing me out. Just cool thoughts. Hey, cheers.